¿Qué dice Racilla? Acá andamos al 100. Oh, estoy experimentando aquí con estos servicios de streaming. Sí, aquí ando revisando. No voy a hacer mucho desmadre hoy. Puede que al rato sí haga más streaming. O haga una hora o dos de Battlefield. Pero por lo mientras aquí estamos. Quiero, saber. Estoy viendo. ¿Cómo se puede hacer esto? Sí, Rací, aquí ando experimentando, buscando. Parapam. Estoy viendo cómo le voy a hacer, ¿va? A ver, sí. Medium. Ok, está. Muy bien. Ok. Nice. Ok. Screen. All right, let's go here. Vamos a ir a YouTube. Vamos a ir a YouTube y vamos a compartir el YouTube para que vean que sí está cabrón el mono. Boom. Y así aparece YouTube. Bueno, no sé cómo estén ustedes hoy en este día, pero hay mucha noticia cayendo desde Washington, D.C. A mí me gusta mantenerme alejado ahorita de la política. Ustedes saben que como soy, muchos, bueno, los nuevos que no me conocen, pues a mí siempre me ha gustado la política, me inculcaron mucho de eso de la política. Me he traumado de tanta pinche política, todo esto de los Epstein Files, esto ya lo supe desde el 2015, 2016. Yo una vez llegué a una meeting de políticos, se llamaba el grupo El Cambio, aquí de este pueblito de Jacksonville. Y yo llegué un día y yo ya había visto tipo Epstein Files, en esos tiempos se llamaba Pizzagate. Y pues sí, yo me la pasé como una semana ahí traumándome yo solo viendo todas esas porquerías de lo que hacen los élites. Y pues me perdí, yo me perdí en ese mundo. Es un mundo específico, va, que si usted no sigue el, ¿cómo se dice? La mano del poder, y no sabe cómo camina todo eso de la política y los élite y toda esa gente, pues se va a traumar, se van a traumar, sin querer queriendo, como dice el Chavo del Ocho, es que es algo muy brutal. y pues, ¿quién va a aguantar ver, am, y escuchar y entender el arte? Esta gente tenían movidas inmensas, tenían, forums de arte donde presentaban el arte de víctimas de Epstein y toda esa gente, vendían, sus obras de arte brutales a gente que hacía ese tipo de acciones. Entonces, imagínense, yo de esa etapa, ¿cuántos años tenía? Yo estaba grande, ya tenía mis 23, 22 años, y pues ya apenas iba a lanzarme a una carrera. Tampoco vamos a decir que iba a ser gobernador o representante de cámara o nada de eso, pero por lo menos ahí me iba a acomodar con la raza de la política y todo eso. Metí fui a un meeting, metí esa esa noticia de Epstein Files, y pues me convertí en burla. De por sí yo ya mucha gente me la hace de burlón, de va, hay que se búrlense de Ramoncito. Al cabo que está malito, va. Al cabo que no sale. Al cabo que él, ya se le botó, va. Pero pues no, yo siempre he estado en mis 5 sentidos, claro, cuando uno se mete al mundo del pori, pues claro, uno se va y se mete a donde hay pori, pues uno no sale, va. Pero aquí estamos, y de aquí que nos saquen va a estar medio cabrón. Este, a mí me gusta decirle a mucha gente que a mí me gusta seguir un camino de cuerpos, ¿va? Cuando yo escucho que un periodista lo mataron en México o en Israel o en cualquier lugar donde hay este conflicto en la Ucrania, voy, miro quién son sus compatriotas, los que lo siguen, y de ahí sigo la noticia porque, no me acuerdo cuál periodista dijo, pero él dijo que el el premio Nobel, o sea, el que está a ese nivel de los periodistas americanos, o sea, si a un periodista americano quiere ganar un premio tipo Nobel Prize, right? Te tiene que matar la CIA, güey. Ese es tu premio, ¿va? Entonces yo sigo a esos vatos que lo escuchas que están investigando la CIA o están investigando tráfico de drogas y luego lo encuentran muerto por ahí. Pues uno dice, no, pues este güey sí era un pinche periodista perrón, ¿va? Y así la seguimos, así nos vamos dando cuenta dónde y quién y cómo camina el poder. Entonces, yo no digo que vamos a llegar en este programa, en lo que estoy haciendo aquí, que vamos a llegar a resolver el mundo y se va a sanar todo, no, nomás vamos a caminar, no vamos a andarle lambiendo huevos, besando culos, no, nada de eso, güey, ah, cuando entró el presidente AMLO, yo vi que aparecieron muchas redes de información, muchas cadenas, mucha gente que según apoyaba al presidente, ¿va? Pero para cualquier pendejo puede hablar bonito y los pueden seguir, ¿va? Ya cuando te metes a leer, a ver y cómo está caminando la cosa, ya cuando ves dos cosas muy diferentes, pues dices, no, pues güey, tú estás ahí diciendo que abrazos no balazos y que no hay violencia y te metes a las redes, según las benditas redes que decía ese güey, y pues están ahí descuartizando a gente, robando y lo que sea. Lo chistoso de todo esto es que yo ya, aunque no sea mucho de calle, yo ya me metí en la calle, güey. Y yo ya vi que en muchas áreas donde el gobierno dice que la violencia y que la violencia, sí, güey, sí hay gente mañosa y gente bastarda y insectos que neta se les gusta abusar a la gente. Pero, pero también hay gente pobre, güey, que a lo mejor sin, si no existiera la delincuencia o el crimen organizado, se murieran de muertos de hambre en la calle, güey. Entonces hay que ver todo esto de cada pinche ángulo que se puede, porque ángeles aquí en la tierra no hay, güey. Ángeles en la tierra aquí no hay, güey. El que nos mandaron de allá arriba, güey, lo colgaron, mira, le metieron el dedo y todo, güey. Pero quieren que uno crea que ellos son santitos, nah, güey. Si aquí en los pueblitos cagados de Estados Unidos son donde más meten la pinche navaja atrás, güey. Entonces, ese es el show, es la introducción al show. Vamos a ver noticias porque nos está cargando la verga, porque no se informan, no se quieren informar y así quieren avanzar, güey. No, o sea. Oh, y este show va a estar en Spanglish. Entonces, si no saben el inglés, aprendan. Si no saben el español, you better start learning, boy. Porque en Estados Unidos tiene que ser un país trilingüe, cuatrilingüe, güey. Ya tenemos que saber inglés, francés, italiano, español, güey. Pero no, güey, son de ranchito y dicen, no, pues ya apenas puedo aprender el español. Y allá en Europa, en esos países de allá, por donde verga, se saben 5, 6, 7 pinches lenguajes, güey. ¿Qué excusa tenemos, güey? No hay excusas. Hay que aprender, güeyes. Quieren estar todos imbéciles. Vamos a empezar con, hubo un tiroteo en Austin, Texas. No me he comunicado con mi gente allá. Tengo gente en esas áreas, no están en Austin. No completamente en Austin, pero tampoco tan retirados, güey. Ahí están como 20, media hora, güey. Es como si yo me fuera aquí, hay un pueblito que se llama Winston, y que tirotearan en Winston y que yo estuviera en la área. O sea, también va. Pero por lo mientras, no creo que estuvo mi gente allá. Hay que ver qué dicen las noticias.
If you want to stand out in 2026, you have to create with tools that keep you sounding original. Now, Co-Producer finds human-made samples.
The FBI is investigating a Texas bar shooting that killed 2 and wounded 14 as a possible terrorist act. Authorities say a gunman wearing clothes with an Iranian flag design and the words "Property of Allah" carried out the shooting early Sunday. It came a day after the US and Israel launched an attack on Iran. The shooting happened outside Buford's Backyard Beer Garden along 6th Street, a nightlife destination only a few miles from the University of Texas at Austin. Nathan Como, a 22-year-old student, had left the bar to go to a food truck across the street about 10 minutes before the first gunshots were fired.
And then around 1:56, I heard about a dozen, probably a few dozen shots ring out. Couldn't really even pinpoint where they were coming from. And honestly, we couldn't even comprehend that they were shots.
The suspect drove past the bar several times before stopping and shooting from the window of his SUV, according to police. He then parked, got out with a rifle, and began shooting at people walking along the street before officers rushed to the intersection and shot him. The Department of Homeland Security said the gunman, who was killed at the scene, was identified as 53-year-old Nadaga Diagne. Diagne first entered the U.S. in 2000 on a B-2 tourist visa and became a lawful permanent resident 6 years later after marrying a U.S. citizen, according to DHS. Multiple people briefed on the investigation say Diagne is originally from Senegal. Texas Governor Greg Abbott warned that the state would respond aggressively to anyone trying to use current conflict in the Middle East to threaten Texas.
No, pues está cabrón, güey. Por eso hay que portarse bien, güey. Y es por eso que hay que estudiar, hay que leer, hay que meterse en el mundo. Y esto es lo que me caga de las religiones, de todas, cristianos, católicos, pentecostés, los mormones, todos estos güeyes. hablan de leer la Biblia, hablan de educarse de la Biblia, güey, pero se ponen a leer la Biblia y luego salen fanáticos, salen terroristas como este vato, ¿va? Que según que por su moralidad, güey, tú no tienes moralidad en este mundo. El mundo es el mundo, güey, y el Dios es de Dios, güey. Déjenlos apartados, güey, porque luego acaban como este güey y la cagan por los demás, güey. No, 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 no. Y dicen que porque leen la Biblia un ratillo, que ya son expertos y ya se creen. No, muchachos, por eso hay padrecitos, por eso hay gente que va y estudia años para que le den sus títulos de iglesia y de saberlo. Hay que ser más puntuales en nuestros propósitos, güeyes. Miren, aquí tumbaron un avión.
To start a podcast with Riverside, all you need is a concept and a word. Here's how it works.
لا والله حربية طيارة حربية طيارة حربية
Yeah, a terrifying scene caught on camera overnight. A U.S. fighter jet spinning out of control in the sky above Kuwait. A Central Command confirms 3 F-15 Strike Eagles were shot down in a friendly fire incident during the intense Iranian barrage. The F-15E is a two-seater, so there were 6 crew members in all. Kuwaiti air defenses reportedly mistook the American jets for an enemy target during the chaos of incoming missiles and drones. All 6 crew members ejected safely and are considered to be in stable condition.
Damn, está cabrón. Imagine that, getting shot down in a jet, bro. That's gotta be like top 10 things that you don't want to happen while you're flying a fucking jet, especially. All right, let's see.
Now, as Israel and the U.S. bombing in Iran continues, the Pentagon says a 4th American service member has now died after an Iranian counterstrike hit a military base in Kuwait over the weekend. And now President Trump is defending the decision to join Israel in attacking Iran.
Operation Epic Fury has killed nearly 50 top Iranian leaders, including the Ayatollah. NBC's Gary Grumbach has the latest from Washington.
The United States and Israel continuing to pound Iran with bombs and missiles for a 3rd straight day. President Trump at the White House explaining why he decided to attack now, after weeks of negotiations with the Iranians.
Our country itself would be under threat, and it was very nearly under threat.
Iran and its allies responding with drone and missile attacks across the region, hitting targets in at least 10 Middle East countries, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Dramatic video after Kuwait shot down 3 American F-15 fighter jets in an apparent friendly fire incident. All 6 crew members survived. The Pentagon confirming today 4 U.S. service members have now died after an Iranian attack in Kuwait over the weekend. The president insisting Operation Epic Fury is ahead of schedule after the initial barrage killed nearly 50 top Iranian leaders, including the Ayatollah.
Right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it.
The conflict stranding hundreds of...
Remember when they said COVID was going to be about 2, 3, 4 weeks? Then it turned into like 5 years. Remember that nightmare?
Thousands of travelers caught in the middle. Americans like Oliver Sims finding themselves unable to get back to the U.S. with airports and airspace across the Middle East suddenly shut down.
I have no idea as to how I'm going to get out of here. Some people are thinking about going and driving to other countries and then catching flights out of there. And so I'm still weighing several different options.
I don't think they know what they are doing.
On Capitol Hill, Democrats slamming the president's decision to go to war.
They've spent through billions of dollars already. I think folks at home want cheaper health care, cheaper housing. I go on and on. They don't want billions spent on unnecessary wars overseas and Americans coming home in flag-draped caskets.
The White House is briefing top congressional leaders from both parties on Operation Epic Fury today and will meet with all members of Congress tomorrow. A bipartisan group of lawmakers says it will vote on a bill this week to rein in President Trump's ability to take further action in Iran. But even if it passes, the president will likely veto it. Gary Grumbach, NBC News, Washington.
Oh, it's tough, it's tough to know what's gonna be, what's real, what's not, what's a scam, especially with this president, I I'll be the first to say that I kind of fell for his first little grift about, we're gonna get the pedophile cannibals, we're gonna QAnon and all this stuff. I really fell for it, but that does not excuse me being silent while all of this new stuff is coming on. All of this new stuff is coming to light. It does not give me an excuse to be silent or to just ignore it. So that's kind of why I came back.
What happens if the U.S. strike Iran, but their traditional Middle Eastern allies say no? If key nations like Qatar and Saudi Arabia deny permission for military action from their soil due to political constraints, the U.S. has to activate its second strategy. This means bypassing the immediate region for staging the attack and instead launching from the perimeter using European bases. However, distance is the ultimate enemy in aerial warfare, which completely rewrites the tactical playbook. But just how many bases does the U.S. actually have in the Middle East to begin with? The U.S. footprint is massive. There are roughly 30 to 40 military installations scattered across the Middle East, hosting around 30,000 to 40,000 troops. This includes massive hubs like Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the naval support activity in Bahrain, and Al Dhafra in the UAE. Losing access to this sprawling, localized network for a strike on Iran is a logistical nightmare, which is exactly why the European backup plan is necessary. If they are denied these local bases, what is this latest strategy they pull out of their sleeves? The core of the new strategy is a massive logistics shift, heavily relying on the deployment of an armada of flying gas stations. The U.S. will employ a coordinated deployment of dozens of KC-135 Strato tanker air-to-air refueling aircraft. These are moving from the continental United States and the UK directly into bases in Greece such as Suda Bay and Bulgaria.
So notice how he says that they're huge aerial gas stations. Well, now you got to put fuel in the gas station to move the gas station to thousands of miles away. We can barely keep gas stations open in town here, bro. Like, just the logistics of all of this is so ridiculous and frankly just unnecessary. Like, we could be building schools right now with the money that we're using for these events.
Why are these KC-135 tankers considered the lifeblood of this operation? Because without them, the operation simply cannot happen. Striking Iran from European bases like those in Cyprus, Greece, or Bulgaria means aircraft must cross immense distances. Fighter jets like F-35s or F-16s simply do not have the internal fuel capacity for a multi-thousand-mile round trip. The KC-135 tankers act as a floating bridge. They rendezvous with the strike packages mid-air to top off their tanks, allowing them to penetrate Iranian airspace, drop their payloads, and make it back to Europe safely. If the tankers don't fly, the strike jets are grounded. So how does the U.S. Navy factor into this massive geographic shift in strategy? To supplement the loss of Middle Eastern land bases, the Navy brings its floating cities into play. For instance, the Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group, currently positioned off Gibraltar, would push rapidly eastward. By reaching the eastern Mediterranean shortly, it creates a crushing strategic pincer. These new carrier can launch at least 4 jets per minute and uses electromagnetic aircraft launch system. A sequence of electromagnets along the track is energized with precise time.
All right, so we're getting all the technical stuff about how we're going to invade and how we're going to bomb and all this stuff. So let's say this all works. Let's say we install some white guy from California to be the president of Iran, right? What happens next? Like, what's the next plan? What do these people think about what's next? Are you anybody that's watching, are you going to go buy a house in Iran? Do you think you're going to go and participate in their elections? People don't even participate in our elections, but we want them to be able to have their own election. Like, do you see how twisted that is? Do you see how in real time, you can be like, oh, well, okay, so we're gonna bomb them, and then we're gonna take out all the terrorists and all the Muslims. We're gonna burn every mosque in Iran. So what's next? That's my idea. What do you, as an American, have anything to as similar to anybody in Iran? You think you'd have some, right? I think you'd have less things in common with your neighbor than people in Iran. I think we are similar, but at the same time, guys, like, this is a completely different place. This isn't fucking downtown shit town that you come from, your little sunset town. They're racist, but to like Christians, or they're racist, against their own little tribes. They have their own little problems, bro. So that's where I'm just like, how does a guy like Donald Trump even begin to conceptualize the idea of toppling a government in Iran? And I get it, nobody wants to live under a totalitarian regime or an authoritarian regime, but we're living through it right now with the big guy upstairs. So I don't, I'm gonna keep saying and repeating the same thing everybody else is saying, but I mean, come on, guys. Like, all right, we're gonna go through this whole video. We're gonna see how they do it. That's probably how they're gonna do it in real life. But what comes after? That's the just think like, oh, am I gonna go buy timeshare in fucking Tehran? No, bro. I can barely afford rent here in the US.
Time and control by digital software. These magnets create a moving magnetic field that smoothly pulls and pushes the shuttle, accelerating the aircraft according to a programmed acceleration curve. Once the aircraft reaches takeoff speed, about 155 miles per hour or around 240 kilometers per hour, then the shuttle releases it, and the aircraft lifts off. The shuttle then slows down electromagnetically and returns to its starting position, ready for the next launch. You might wonder why the Navy chose this costly upgrade over the tried and true steam catapults. The answer is simple. Electromagnetic takeoff provides smoother acceleration, significantly reducing stress and wear on aircraft frames compared to the harsh forces of steam catapults. Well, apart from aircraft carrier, the US also needs a monstrous amount of missile terminal air defense system. The US had actually removed 60% of its missile defense systems from Qatar and the Middle East. So how many missiles are being transported from different parts of the world to fix?
Bro, I'm only 3 minutes in. This is going to be very annoying to people that actually want to watch this, but you can go watch it on your own time. Bro, so I used to go, I live in the middle of nowhere, there's sticks all over the place, there's woods, there's cow there's cow fields and whatever. But I'm just thinking about when I used to go to school and like hang out with the locals, right? Because I'm not, I was born here, whatever, first generation, what the fuck, who cares? But like when I would hang out with all the white kids and stuff, and they would talk about invading other countries, it was like the dumbest gun ho, like borderline retarded strategies. And we were kids, who cares, right? But these kids, they get these ideas from their parents, and I feel like if I was growing up in a town, let's say where there's towns in Alabama where there's a lot of STEM people that work with STEM. There's a specific thing going down in Alabama. People like places like in what's that place called? Fucking in California where they make all the microchips and stuff. Silicon Valley. I feel like if I went to a school around in that area, and people around here would say, "Oh, you mean libtards?" That's how fucking dumb this whole area is. They can barely conceptualize voting and why voter ID is voter suppression, because they're like, oh, well, I don't have nothing to I'm not hiding nothing. I can get a paper with my name and address on it. But that's because their family literally owns like the post office, stuff like that. Like they're all tied into like stuff like that. And they're like, oh, well, I can do, they make it so easy because they are part of the system. And they don't see that, there are communities where they can barely They barely have enough money, bro, to make it to work and back and have enough to pay rent, have a little bit of food, and just a tiny bit of leisure time, which I know for a lot of conservatives, a little bit of leisure time is just, it's a no-go. You can have no chill time. You have to be working until you drop dead, and that's it. But like I said, I believe that a lot of these conversations that, you know, I would have with people around here, and it was just the dumbest thing you'd ever heard. I feel like if I had those conversations in a place like, you know, maybe Silicon Valley, and this is putting a lot of faith in humanity, I feel like the conversations would be just a tiny bit above what I get here. Just a little bit, just a little drawback, a little bit of pushback, a little bit more of a debate and discussion. But that's just putting too much faith in humanity. So I don't think they're too much smarter over there, but I feel like it'd be just a tiny bit of switch of tone. Maybe not bomb Iran, but maybe impose sanctions on Iran. You know what I mean?
This. The answer is fill the sky with these globe masters. The U.S. military needs a massive airlift of roughly 4 to 6 Patriot batteries and components for a THAAD battery. This involves over 300 heavy transport flights. But here is the detail most people miss. The U.S. needs a flood of aging Patriot missiles to be pulled from stockpiles in Germany and Japan. Why move old missiles? Because they are the perfect cheap solution for Iran's thousands of Shahed drones. Commanders are hoarding the brand new scarce PAC-3 kinetic interceptors for the hypersonic and ballistic missile threats. The military is clearing out the Cold War inventory to save the modern tech for the big one. But the Navy destroyers will be the first one to strike. The attack begins not with manned aircraft, but with robotic precision from the sea. The goal is simple: blind the enemy's eyes, their radars, and silence their voice, their command and control. In the Persian Gulf and the Northern Arabian Sea, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, ships like the USS Thomas Hudner, receive the launch order. The vertical launch system cells hiss open, and moments later, dozens of Tomahawk land attack missiles erupt from the decks. These missiles fly at subsonic speeds, humming the terrain in what we call nap of the Earth flight to stay below the radar horizon. They are programmed to loiter and strike simultaneously. Their warheads slam into S-300 and S-400 radar sites and command bunkers. They degrade the integrated air defense system, effectively carving out safe corridors for the pilots who are minutes behind them. While the Tomahawks are still impacting, the silver bullets of the U.S. Air Force are already deep inside hostile airspace. These are the B-2 Spirit stealth bombers.
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana.
Hell yeah, buddy.
Await the Iran attack strategy. First and perhaps most famous is the Swarm. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates hundreds of small, fast attack craft armed with heavy machine guns, rockets, and anti-ship missiles. The tactic here is simple, but deadly. Instead of trying to fight a U.S. destroyer one-on-one, which they would lose, they deploy dozens of small boats simultaneously from every direction. The goal is to overwhelm the U.S. ship's defensive systems, like the Phalanx, by presenting more targets than the ship can track and destroy at once. Moving to Tactic 2, mining the Strait. Next, we have the Silent Killer, mining the Strait of Hormuz. This is the world's most critical oil choke point. Iran maintains an inventory of thousands of naval mines, including smart mines that can listen for the specific acoustic signatures of enemy ships. In a conflict, Iran could use submarines, small boats, or even disguised civilian vessels to drop mines right into the shipping lanes. The goal here isn't just military, it's economic. This would deny the U.S. Navy safe passage and immediately spike global oil prices, inflicting massive economic pain on the U.S. and its allies. Here comes Tactic 3, the kill zone. Third is the geographic advantage, coastal missile batteries. The Iranian coastline is mountainous and rugged, perfect cover for mobile missile launchers. The regime also employs shoot-and-scoot tactics using truck-mounted cruise and ballistic missiles. They fire a missile and immediately move to a new hiding spot before the U.S. can strike back. This effectively turns the Gulf into a kill zone, where U.S. ships are under constant threat of fire from land with nowhere to hide. Tactic 4. We have the ambush threat, midget submarines. The Persian Gulf is actually quite shallow, which makes it difficult for massive U.S. nuclear submarines to operate. However, it is perfect for Iran's fleet of diesel-electric mini-subs, like the Ghadar class. These small subs can sit silently on the seafloor, waiting for a target to pass overhead before firing torpedoes. It's a surprise ambush tactic designed to damage high-value assets, like carriers or destroyers, while remaining almost impossible to detect by sonar. These small but stealth submarines, designed for operations in the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf, pose a significant threat to U.S. aircraft carriers. The Ghadar-class submarines, which are difficult to detect due to their small size and low acoustic signature, could position themselves in strategic locations near key naval choke points, such as the Strait of Hormuz. By waiting in ambush near expected carrier movements, Ghadar-class submarines could fire a coordinated torpedo strike, targeting the hull and propulsion systems of U.S. carriers. A successful torpedo strike on an aircraft carrier could disable its flight deck operations, significantly reducing the U.S. Navy's ability to project air power in the region. Additionally, these submarines could lay underwater mines in critical sea lanes, forcing U.S. warships into predetermined ambush zones where Iranian missile and drone attacks could follow up.
By the way, the American propaganda machine is so effective and intense and real. This could happen, like Iran could actually plan this and execute it, and they would, or no, Israel could do it to the U.S. and blame Iran, and there you go. It's Iran's fault now.
Tactic 5.
That's how effective it is. Israel could do it.
We can't ignore the aerial threat. This is drone warfare. Iran has invested heavily in becoming a drone superpower in the Middle East. In a conflict, they would use UAVs not just for surveillance, but as loitering munitions, essentially suicide drones. The tactic is to launch them in massive waves to crash into the sensitive radar dishes and flight decks of U.S. ships. The goal is to blind the fleet's sensors and halt flight operations, leaving the ships vulnerable to missile attacks. Let's look at Tactic 6. The U.S. fleet relies on ports in Bahrain and air cover from bases in Qatar to sustain the fight. Iran possesses the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East. Their strategy includes massive missile barrages targeting these static headquarters and logistical hubs. The goal isn't just to destroy buildings, but to deny the U.S. Navy the fuel, ammo, and command support it needs to stay in the fight. If the ships have nowhere to dock, they can't stay in the Gulf. But if the Iranian disable the Navy carrier, can the U.S. still fight back? The answer is yes. Focusing only on the slow-moving ships is a mistake. The United States holds an ace up its sleeve that doesn't need to wait for a clear shipping lane. Even without a carrier strike group, the U.S. can deliver precision strikes for weeks to come. This is the domain of Air Force Global Strike Command. They can deploy the Big Three strategic bombers anywhere in the world in just 24 hours. First, you have the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. This is the door kicker. It is the only aircraft in history capable of taking off from Missouri, flying non-stop to Iran, penetrating the most advanced air defense networks undetected, and dropping massive bunker busters on deep underground facilities. Second, the B-1B Lancer, known as the Bone. This supersonic heavy hitter carries the largest payload of any U.S. bomber. It can dash in at high speed and low altitude to deliver massive cruise missiles or satellite-guided bombs to clear the path. And finally, the B-52 Stratofortress. It may look old, but do not underestimate it. It acts as a flying missile truck, capable of launching long-range cruise missiles from hundreds of miles away, well outside the reach of Iranian air defenses. Let's take a look at how this works. The first line attack involves the B-2 stealth bomber moving in to destroy high-value air defense systems like the famous S-400 Triumph and other surface-to-air missiles, effectively disabling them by using its stealth technology. Next, the B-1 Lancer flies at a very low altitude towards enemy targets to take out older anti-aircraft guns and missiles. This clears the way for conventional aircraft like the B-52 Stratofortress, which can then sweep in to destroy any critical infrastructure without facing anti-aircraft threats. This is the reason they need both the B-2 stealth bomber and conventional bombers, as there are only 19 units of the B-2 Spirit in service to date. We make original videos from scratch, so please do subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos.
So we look at stuff like this, right? And I'm gonna keep repeating this. What happens after this?
Await the Iranian also have an attack strategy.
Let's say Iran holds this off. What happens then? Who do we go against after that? It just makes you think, you know. Oh, and by the way, the U.S. government the administration of Donald Trump wants to get its hands on AI systems that would facilitate finding a lot of these people that are, terrorists or resistance fighters to the U.S. Which, I mean, if you're resisting the United States of America in any type of military form, you're kind of a hard ass, bro. Like, respect, because these people, evil is their art. Like, the US take anything evil, and the US is just the top of the class of everything. You know what I mean? We're coming up on the genocide one with all this ICE stuff. It's incredible. Damn, I want to watch this deposition. It's just it's 4 hours is just way too fucking much, bro. If you can't ask the dude, if you can't sit the guy down and ask him questions for 20 minutes and get a little bit of an idea of what he knew or didn't know, you're a pleb, bro. You're just wasting everybody's time. And with all of that Epstein stuff, it is designed to re-traumatize people that already went through this stuff and saw it and, try to speak out on it. It brings back that sense of just complete misunderstanding. I was looking at people and I was like, oh, you get me, right? And they'd be like, nah, bro, what are you talking about? Tom Hanks eats children. I was like, bro, they have fucking underground rituals and deep underground military bases, that they end up selling them to millionaires, and then these little cults get them and they use them for a bunch of fucked up shit. So, that the files are very much made to re-traumatize people like me, that were telling people about this 10 years ago. So whenever we try to come back to this, we're kind of just like I don't want to look at it because I don't know the new stuff. There's a lot of new stuff. I didn't know they were trying to create X-Men, which apparently is like a thing that they were trying to create. And they were looking for people that could read minds. It was crazy stuff. Let's look for another video that talks about what would happen between Iran and the US if they got into a fight. Here we go. This would be pretty good. But yeah, man, like what happens after this?
Let me show you why I stopped paying for all my other sample libraries. This is Arcade by Output. This thing has sounds, samples.
It's a showdown that's been brewing for years, and 2022 is increasingly looking like the year that the war everyone has feared will finally happen. The United States versus Iran. How do the two sides stack up to each other, and how would a war between the two play out? Iran is ranked in 14th place amongst the world's top militaries. Not bad for a nation that's been under severe sanctions for years. But today it's facing off against the world's #1 ranked military and only global superpower, the United States of America. A conflict between Iran and the US is unlikely to become severe enough to cause a need for the US to fully mobilize its population, though Iran might certainly need to. However, more population means a bigger economy and more capabilities. And here the United States takes the cake with a population of 335 million versus Iran's 86 million. That's a difference of 249 million more Americans than Iranians. Of that population, though, the US could call on 147 million for potential military service, though only 122 million of them are physically or mentally fit enough to actually serve. Iran, on the other hand, has a manpower pool of 48 million, with only 40 million actually fit for service. If a war between Iran and the US were to turn into a multi-year stalemate, it would be important to quickly replenish losses. And here too, the United States holds the advantage, with 4.3 million teenagers reaching military age annually, versus Iran's 1.3 million. Currently, though, on active duty, the United States has the world's third largest military, with a 1.39 million strong military versus Iran's 575,000. Reserves are important for replenishing.
So this is giving you, US 1.3, Iran 5.7. If this really does go all the way, we're really trying to call China's bluff. And Russia too, because they're allies with Iran. So, don't be surprised if one day you just see a flash beyond the horizon, right? And then you feel a little rumble under your seat. Then you get a call from Jimmy down the street, and they said they nuked Washington, D.C. Just don't be surprised, bro, because these guys are really asking for it, And who knows where Trump is? He's either in fucking Florida, in Mar-a-Lago, or he's in fucking New York, which is probably his best bet right now.
Casualties and rotating out exhausted troops to give them a chance to recoup and recover, and both countries are pretty evenly matched there, with the U.S. having...
Oh, and by the way, this is just for, if you're 100% we're going to war with Iran, I support the president, gung-ho, let's go. I just have to ask you one question. What did Iran do to you specifically? Oh, wait. What did Iran do to your family, bro? What did Iran do to your community? Do you get what I'm saying? They tried this thing, well, not tried, but this guy in Texas went out on a shooting rampage, right? What if people actually fell for that and we're like, yeah, let's go attack Iran? Bro, in the past 50 years, let's say the oldest person watching this is 40 years old. What in the past 40 years has Iran done to you specifically, your family, your community, your bank account, that makes you want to go and invade? That's the only question I got for you.
A reservist force of 442,000 versus Iran's 350,000. Iran enjoys such large amounts of reservists thanks to the fact that its military service is compulsory for all males upon reaching adulthood. This means that the Iranian active duty military is largely made up of conscripts, with few professional volunteer soldiers. These conscripts are typically drafted at age 19 and made to serve 2 years, though few receive much useful military training during that time. Most Iranian soldiers rarely ever fire their weapons and have to...
Bro, if they're actually getting trained for this amount of time, they wipe maybe 60% of all of our boys. Our kids are barely getting outside. Our kids are barely, I'm pretty sure the new age, the Christian, I'm pretty sure they got them outside, digging holes somewhere. Those kids will be all right. But these guys are actually getting military training. We barely, if I put 30 kids from my community out in these woods, and these woods ain't even that big. It's like 4 miles by 3 miles. They would get lost out there and die. They wouldn't find their way out. That's 30 kids from this community.
Work with equipment that's mostly from the first half of the Cold War. This is in sharp contrast with the U.S. military, which maintains an aggressive year-round training cycle. Training is frequently punctuated with small-scale exercises and occasionally with larger multi-unit exercises. The U.S. Navy's RIMPAC exercise, for example, is a massive event that takes place every 2 years and involves the military forces of over 24 partner nations across the Pacific Rim. Not only do conscripts traditionally perform very poorly against professional all-volunteer forces, but Iran's conscripts undergo very little useful training and would be completely overwhelmed against America's professionally trained warfighters. A military is only as good as the equipment it can afford, and war is a costly affair. Iran has an annual budget of $5 billion for its military, though the nation spends significant amounts of money under the table carrying out various military-related activities in its sphere of influence. By comparison, the United States has a defense budget of $770 billion, absolutely dwarfing what Iran spends annually. In the realm of military hardware, Iran fields an air force of 543 planes versus the US's 13,247.
By the way, the reason why Iran doesn't spend that many billions of dollars on its military is because it's spending hundreds of millions of dollars on hospitals, schools, infrastructure. Its nuclear program, in case they want a reactor to build a nuclear, I mean, I guess you could say they could build a nuclear bomb, but a power plant, bro. You know, nuclear is not a universally bad thing. When I went to DC, when Donald Trump got inaugurated on the day that he got inaugurated, I was there, and I was there with it was a socialist group. A lot of them were commies, straight up commies. I didn't know this crew. I kind of lean very left towards that area now, but back then I was very much center. I was very liberal. A chick I even got on film some chick that I was telling not to beat up a Trump supporter. I should have let them lynch them. She said she called me a liberal, and I got it on film, but whatever. What was I gonna say?
These on Iran's side, 100
was saying something
versus the U.S.'s realm of military 770 billion.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why Iran doesn't have one of the greatest militaries in the world. Is because first of all, they do fund a lot of sketchy things around the world. There are Muslims have a very big, huge fanatical base that goes around. You know, Christians are no different, Jews no different. Every branch of every religion has that little crew that's just a bunch of weirdo dudes, and they like to kill the other religions and fight amongst the religions. Anyway, and I feel like that's always going to happen. But the way that we counter that is with more education, not less education, and a lot more education in the fields of tech. But not too much, because, the Silicon Valley guys are out of control right now.
Absolutely dwarfing what Iran spends annually. In the realm of military hardware, Iran fields an air force of 543 planes versus the U.S.'s 13,247. Of these, on Iran's side, 197 are fighter aircraft, while the U.S. maintains a fighter fleet of 1,957. If Iran and the U.S. were to come to blows, the U.S. might find itself surprised to be taking on one of its own most capable fighters ever built during the Cold War. That's because Iran is still fielding the F-14 Tomcat, having an estimated 40 of them still in service. This is thanks to a pre-revolution deal with the Iranian government that saw them buy 80 of the planes, though only 79 were delivered. After the revolution, the United States shut down all support for Iran's Tomcat fleet, and it feared having to go up against the formidable fighter so much that it actually destroyed every single Tomcat it retired to prevent Iran from having any opportunity of seizing badly needed parts for maintenance. Without U.S. support for parts replacement, its Tomcat fleet has been steadily shrinking as planes are cannibalized to keep others flying. Today, it's believed between 40 to 43 of them are still mission capable, with 20 fully mission capable and 20 only partially mission capable. The rest of Iran's air fleet is made up of Cold War-era MiG-29s, American F-4 Phantom IIs and F-5 Tiger II, Chinese J-7s, Mirage F-1s, Su-22s, and domestically made at HESA Kosar and HESA Sae-K.
So a very important thing to note is that, yes, Iran, we could probably stomp Iran on its own, but you got to think they're going to be sending Chinese planes. Russia's going to be involved in some kind of covert way. They're going to be using satellite info. It's going to be a mess. That's the whole thing about this. It's just a big mess that's not really necessary. We can put what do they call that? Sanctions on Iran. They've always done that. I guess they're just trying to what do they call that? They're trying to speed run the apocalypse, bro.
The latter are only available in very low numbers and are both light attack jets, widely considered to be very inefficient machines. In a ground attack role, Iran is forced to use multi-role planes such as the Su-22 and domestically modified F-5E. known as the HESA Azarash. Both planes are only suited for small-scale strike missions, and with a lack of targeting pods are incapable of precision strikes. Iran's fighter fleet is largely non-modern, though some of their planes have received fourth-generation avionics. However, so many different aircraft models are a nightmare to conduct maintenance on, so it's unlikely many of these planes are actually operationally ready, and even less likely they would remain so during high-tempo combat operations. Such a diverse and mixed air fleet drives up both maintenance costs and time, and can make sourcing replacement parts a nightmare. By comparison, though, the United States fields the world's most modern air fleet, though some of the planes are showing a growing lack of modernity. The F-15 Eagle and F-16 Fighting Falcon are both extremely capable fighter aircraft, capable of both air superiority and ground attack, but are showing their age against increasingly sophisticated modern fighters and air defenses. America's F-22 remains the single deadliest airplane in the sky, with significant capability overmatch against any other fighter aircraft in the world. However, it's also one of the most expensive aircraft in the world, forcing the U.S. Air Force to limit its production run to just under 200. Today, 195 remain in service, and no further Raptors will ever be built. Instead, the U.S. Air Force is already looking ahead to a sixth-generation fighter for air superiority, with a prototype already tested and flown. In the meantime, it relies on its fleet of F-15s and F-35s for the air superiority mission, with 283 fifth-generation F-35s across all arms of the U.S. military. This number grows every year, with a planned purchase of 1,763 F-35s for just the U.S. Air Force alone. Lockheed Martin is set to provide the U.S. military with approximately 135 planes per year until the contract is completed, making U.S. Air Forces deadlier with every passing year. The U.S. Navy and Marines, meanwhile, operate the vaunted F-18 Super Hornet, which replaced the F-14 Tomcat in 1985. One of the most agile jets on the planet, it's light enough to be launched from carriers, but capable of bringing large weapons packages to the fight, making it perfect as a multi-role fighter. To support ground troops, though, the U.S. Air Force relies on the A-10 Thunderbolt II, an impressive ground attack aircraft that has achieved legendary status since its introduction in 1977. Strategic bombing is carried out by a mixed fleet of B-52 Stratofortresses, B-2 Spirits, and B-1B Lancers. The B-52 was put into service first in 1955 and incredibly is set.
All right, so we could probably wipe Iran in 24 hours if we really tried. But see, this is one of the things I was telling my dad a couple of well, I mean, I forgot where I heard this from, but I was repeating it to the fam the other day. I was saying this was going on about the Ukrainian war. Every time you see a battle going on from the Ukraine, and I mean, now they have so many camera angles now. They have the infantry guys, they have cameras, the tank has a camera, they have drones with cameras, and then they have a long distance the planes that go above the atmosphere, and they can see people from hundreds of miles away. We have all of those camera angles, right? We have all of those camera angles, and yet I have yet to see a large scale battle where even something to the tier of Battlefield, which is when you read about battles from World War II, Vietnam War, later in the war, it was 2 or 3 people because it was a more controlled in the Vietnam War. It was a more controlled type of this war I'm about to explain. There's wars where they send in 80,000 at a time for a battle, 100,000, 20, 30,000 people died in one afternoon. You know what I mean? And those are real war battles. That's real war. I mean, in the history of time, there's never been wars like what we're having these days, where 2, 3 people die one day, the next day, maybe 20 people die, the next day, 2 people, 1 person dies. Historically in time, when we go to war, it's like, 500 or less is a good day. 1,000 people died today, thank God. That's real war. Now we're giving these Hollywood productions, like I said, you have 100 different angles of the same battle, and half of those cameras are just tied to unmanned drones. So you have less than 50 guys on a battlefield that's hundreds of miles long, where in the past, in real war, in real engagements, in real battles, it's, you know, you have probably 10,000 guys out there for one couple square miles, and then the other 10,000 guys are on that side trying to hold them down. And it's not that. You're just seeing a big production type thing, which I'm not buying. This Iran thing, I'm not buying. A lot of it is very much show, and that's kind of what I'm. That's kind of why I ended that video, is because, like, yeah, guy, you guys are telling me that we completely outgun the whole country of Iran, and we can't go in there and take them like they did Maduro, which they can't. They could have very much well have done that, but they don't do it. Why? Because it's a theatrical thing. They're trying to sell. They're trying to sell stocks and bonds without it going completely under. Full transparency and full disclosure. Every time you see a missile launch or flying or crashing into something on TV, I'm making a little bit off of that. I mean, I am invested in all of these companies. Why? Because people, well, the majority of Americans are too busy trying to feed their kids, feed themselves, feed their parents, to even pay attention to a fraction of the stuff that I pay attention to. I am very privileged to say that. But that does not excuse that they are voting in these monsters that are doing these types of things to people we don't even know, bro. We have no idea how these people even operate on their day-to-day, bro. Unless you are Iran, you have some kind of weird obsession with Iran and you're American, you do not know how these people live at all. And you know what's funny, bro? Most of these countries that we're attacking are 10 times more conservative than half of this shit that they do here in America. Why do you think Donald Trump has so many Hispanic, Latino, Native American, Native Mexican supporters? Because we've been raped by Christianity for the past 400 years anyway. So we're already used to the brutality. And and most of the time we're brainwashed to be like, yeah, they deserve it. But we don't even know how these people operate or even work, bro. And that's kind of the reason why I did this little live thing. I do want to do it on YouTube and Twitch, and that'll be for the future. But this is a little taste of, I mean, it's nothing new. People have been doing it for a while now. I just wanted to put my voice out there and have it, have people hear it and see, like, actually get an eye onto like what I see. I'm not, how many people do you know that if you said, hey, pull up your YouTube and show everyone you know, and even strangers, what's on your YouTube feed? A lot of people are going to say, no, I'm not going to show half of what I see. But, no hay miedo. I'm constantly keeping myself, ignore the AI girlfriend, informed. And yeah, man, I feel like a lot of people right now are they're letting themselves be dumbed down, and there's just no excuse for it. And yeah, get educated or get fucking stomped down. But I know where I'm gonna be. But that's it for the stream. It was an hour. You can go back, see it. I'll make it a reel. Be cool, stay in school.